Looking back after all these years of training in this art and going through this process, if I had to pick a time period that I think fondly about all the time, when I'm on the mats teaching something, a memory might flash in my mind, or talking to some of my students and you know, being nostalgic, is those years, those intermediate years. Probably 3 or 4 years in, I was starting to get to those ranks where more was required of you, more time, more effort, more hoops you had to jump through to get to the next rank. You know, in our system there is a tried and true methodology of making advanced ranks and subsequently making instructors if you stick it out that long. There's written requirements, there's oral test requirements, there's first aid requirements, multiple physical tests, strike tests and technique tests and application tests and freeform self-defense lines you have to do that in and of themselves are life-changing once you've gone through them, for sure. But it was more than that. It was, if I took a bird's eye view of the whole time, it was just that era of growth, and that growth that you did with certain people that were on the mats with you. It's your training partners, both senior and those below you, that you shared the mats with. You know, I said earlier, the mats don't lie. That was a very popular or very frequent thing Mr. Weber used to remind us of, and I do the same thing with my students. On those mats, you know, we were forced to face those fears and those uncertainties and those weaknesses and the successes and failures. But we did them with people we trusted and we grew a bond with. Not everyone I necessarily hung out with on a daily basis, but when we met each other on the mats, we were brothers and sisters, for sure. And even though some of those people I haven't seen in many years, if I were to see them tomorrow, I'd give them a big hug, and we'd continue like, you know, we have seen each other, you know, just yesterday. That's just the kind of bonds that you grow with people. And when I joined with Mr. Weber's school, it was 6 months in, and there were several people there that were a key influence to me and very positive in my growth in the art. You know, one of those was Steve Schweitzer. He had a ninjutsu school close by. He had met Mr. Weber and basically closed his school, brought his students with him, and they all joined up as white belts. And you know, who does that other than someone with great character and honor and a very humble person? So he was our senior belt there for many years, for all the years we trained there, until he moved away. And he was a big part of my growth in the art. You know, if you threw Steve and you were able to do a technique on him, then you knew it worked. If you were there and you know he was supposed to go down but didn't, well, then you had to figure out why, and that really helped me in my training. I'll tell you right now, and I can't thank him enough. So if you're watching this, Steve, thank you. Another person, ironically enough, was a childhood friend of mine. He lived in the same neighborhood. I was friends with his brother. He was older than me by a couple years. Tony Saldano. And I had lost touch with him, you know, through middle school and high school. You know, you grow apart, you have your own, you know, pot of friends, and you know, you lose relationships. But I did. He was there on the mats when I joined, and you know, went over to him and shook his hand. And how funny to find you here. So he was another long-time training partner. And he and Steve were both very influential to me in my learning the art, for sure. A couple other people, Gary Moriera, who I haven't seen in many years, is another one. Elliot Schwartz, of course, who I still train with to this day in this school, who was very instrumental in continuing the art in the area. Karen Brand, I can go on and on. I mean, if I didn't name you, it's not on purpose. I just, you know, I forget. But your faces are still here for sure. But those times I look back with a lot of nostalgia because we went through a process that was special. It really, really was. And I try to do that as much as possible in my school. I want my students to think back the same way after many, many years, that the process was special and they were part of something special. And that's what our schools did. All our schools breed that kind of feeling, and it should be there. And the process is really what makes it happen. It really, really does. That grueling process, that process that is unforgiving and unrelenting. I know when I was going through this era, I was a young father. I had a couple jobs. I had just at some point went back to school to get my my digital media degree. A lot of family pressures and all that stuff that comes along with a young man in that era. And I can't tell you how many times I wanted to quit if I had $1 for every time, but I didn't. I'm not sure why. I just, no matter how much pressure I got, you have to train today, or can you work today? No, I got class tonight. Oh, you went last week. Yes, I did go last week, but you have to keep going. That's the whole point of this. And again, if I had $1 for every time, I had to make that argument. But I knew inside of me there was something that kept telling me to keep going. This is going to pay off, not financially. Never really looked for that, but more of growing me into the person I wanted to be. And I don't know that I'm there yet, but I'm definitely trying, that's for sure. So that era was, again, very special. Anybody that's trained in the martial arts for as many years as I have and more will always look back at that certain training period, that intermediate period that really kicked you and made you go forward in that growth. And that's what that time did. Mr. Weber was unrelenting with us. He, from making us do class plans that he marked up with a red pen, which I have folders and folders of to this day, teaching in front of him and under his watchful eye, which was very stressful in the beginning for sure. Still is, not as much, but still is. Making the mistakes, yeah, there were injuries for sure. You don't train with that kind of intensity and that type of honesty without getting injured. But knock on wood, all those years we had very few major injuries. I had one, and that was from my own stupidity. And really that's when it happened, when you really didn't listen to the process and didn't listen to your instructor and you wanted to do things that you weren't ready for, you got hurt. And that's, again, part of it. So looking back at those years again, I look back on them fondly because of that process, and that's really what I want to speak about, and that's what I want potential students who are watching this to understand, that process is special. The process is meant to grow you as a person, not just as a martial artist. It's very easy. I can take anybody off the street and teach them how to do technique. I can teach them how to hurt somebody very easily. That's not the point. I could teach them to do a kick. I could teach them to do a fall and a roll. I've done it to many people. I've done it from kids as young as 5 to adults as old as 80. That's the easy part, believe it or not. The hard part is instilling in people what was instilled in me, is that sense of giri. That giri is a debt that you can never repay. Having that towards your instructor in your school, of being part of the process, of showing up to class, no matter what's going around in your life, no matter if there's family in town and you're expected to go to dinner, no matter if it's you're not feeling that well, or I don't know, you have an appointment that you forgot about. I can't tell you how many times I reschedule things to accommodate my training. Of course, it wasn't always met with happiness by other people in my life, but they just didn't understand. I didn't expect them to understand. It's not for them to understand. It's for me and that student to understand it, to push themselves. It's not easy. It isn't easy. Ask anybody that's been doing this even for 5 years and has a solid attendance record. There are times when it tested them. There was times when they wanted to drive home from work and get dinner, take a shower, kick their feet up and watch some TV and go to bed. I still feel this way to this day sometimes, but you know what? That feeling has no chance of winning anymore. Beat that out of my system a long time ago. So yeah, that's kind of what I look back on, and some people might not understand that, might not get it, but really that's for me what's important. That's what the martial arts instills in people. That's what it instills in me. And that's what I'd like to instill in potential students who are walking through that door, over and above the physical training, which is, in my opinion, secondary. It's a very important second tier, but most important is building that person above that tier and making it a big part of the package, if that makes any sense. And our art of Nihon Goshin Aikido is very unique in that it's set up to instill that. The process is set up to grow the person, not just the martial artist, not just the practitioner of the art, but the person of the art. And it's art that allows us to keep evolving, which is what I'm trying to do with the art in my way, and hopefully that'll be my legacy. It's not about making money, it's not about becoming famous, it's not about any of that stuff. It's about just systematically, incrementally growing as a person, no matter whether you're an instructor, the owner of a school, or just a new white belt. And that's the most important thing.